Hi and welcome. It's Shane from Avstar. Very good evening, and I wanted to share a few thoughts with me and a friend this evening on a few subjects that you can feel free if you want to a bit later on. Put down in the comments section, and we might answer a few of those for you. But there's a couple of topics I want to talk about. One of them is the human rights, and I know that this is something that other countries have got. Like the America have got the Constitution and the essence of human rights, like having the freedoms to talk on subjects of whatever you're choosing is, associating with whoever you want to, and talking literally about anything you want to, is repeated in other countries' democratic systems. So, like I say, in America you'd have in the Constitution, you would have something that protected you in that. I mean, you being American would probably know more about that than me. But, over here, we had the Magna Carta, which is a very dated document now. And I'm pretty sure it is still in power, that documentation. But the bones and the meat, so to speak, have been removed from it. So I wanted to talk about Article 10 of the Human Rights. And I wanted to also just show that how this is being absolutely neglected right now by politicians, that whatever reason you chose to stand on those human rights, the government now have got an excuse to say that they don't have to award you those rights. But some of the things that me and my friend have been talking about this week, and we'll ask her for her opinion at any point on any subject as we have this discussion, is the cost of living crisis that is taking place now in the UK. And I think it has a lot of knock-on effects, not just the poverty level of it. It's what else it can lead to. Such as mental illness and things along those lines, and one can trigger the other, or they can be in part in somebody's life at the same time, which is preventing either a situation where that person's homeless can get themselves into a property, or it could be that they've got a property but they've got mental illness, and that's threatening them keeping their property or the roof over their head. And we're seeing people with now a lot of mental illness here in the UK, in Europe, in the United States, that have not only become homeless, they've also become mentally ill as a result of that. And those are the sort of things that I wanted to talk about. But there's just one other thing I wanted to. I might flip from one topic to the next. Another thing I wanted to talk about is something that we can almost predict now where a lot of things are going. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're struggling a little bit financially at the moment, if you're living on your own, that it's very difficult for you to manage the household bills if you're living on your own. And even I know now that two people in a relationship are struggling. And where does this go if we just forecast this, say 10 years down the road? Are we going to be looking at families that not only both the male and the female, or whatever the relationship is, have to work, but then they also did what was very common back in the Edwardian times and Victorian days, where the children
Can I just say, right, when you're talking about this, you're actually talking about what is already happening around the world, and also about people having to choose between heating and eating. So why should people have to suffer and choose between their heating and eating? But it's not just that, families are feeling it when it comes to school uniforms as well. The school uniforms they're picking are more expensive because they want the logos on them. So with that in mind, people are suffering not only financially, because they can't afford to keep their families going, they can't afford to feed their children, hence schools bringing in breakfast time in the schools to make sure that kids have breakfasts.
Is that really the case now?
That is what's
breakfast
happening.
And dinner in schools now.
They're having breakfast and they're having dinner there, and some of them are even staying over where the families are having to pay for them to stay over so that they can continue their job to afford just for their general household bills.
Yeah, and I remember the days where, you know, it wasn't breakfast, but you certainly got a bottle of milk. But Margaret Thatcher did away with that. But I remember, you know, at school back in the day where, you know, you did get a bottle of milk, but it was to do with, you know, the general health, you know, making the children in the schools get, you know, even if it is
some protein that they were going to have during the day.
Yeah.
But this is also causing a lot of depression between families. Mental health has gone up so much, and my understanding of mental health was zilch to Nero, nothing really, until I found it happening around me.
Yeah.
And for this to be happening around me was quite a shock, and it's down to the cost of living. The cost of living has a lot to say for it.
Yeah, one other thing you mentioned there is the designer labels for the kids' clothes. And I don't think that has any place in a school, because, you know, there are going to be the rich kids and the very poor kids, and it's going to be very easy to identify them by what they wear. So I don't think that, you know, if that is something that's probably been encouraged over the most recent few years, then that's something that should be outlawed, I think. You know, that was the whole idea of having the school uniform so that everyone, you know, wasn't singled out by what they wear.
But this is then again down to the wages that a family can bring in, because back in my day we had the poor class, the middle class, and then there was the upper class. And when you were in the middle class, you were in the class where families, a male or the female in that family would go out to work, and they would earn an income where they still had enough money either to have a takeaway on a Friday night, or to go out on a Saturday, or even a day trip away.
Yeah,
now there is none of that.
Yeah, there's no longer any money left in the month, you know, for those luxuries, even though they're not. Some people wouldn't consider a takeaway a luxury, but, you know, it has become the luxury now because not everyone can afford it. You know, with us having to pay that little bit extra on everything, like the water bills, the electricity bills, the gas bills, you know, the council taxes, and rent increases, energy across the range, you know, and transport increasing costs. You know, it hasn't left anyone with the money.
So we're talking basically food, rent, energy, everything that is needed for you to survive has gone up.
Yeah,
and the working wage, they say, has gone up, but then you get taxed on it. It's not just taxed on the working wage, you're taxed on your food, you're taxed on your petrol, you're taxed on absolutely everything. Even when you retire, your retirement pension is taxed. It's taxed before it's given to you.
Well, we've got 20% tax on your salary, then there's the national insurance on top of that. And then when you buy anything in the shop, you're paying 20% VAT. So the tax is close to 50% on every person in the country. And then if you're fortunate to have parents that leave you a property, you might get property taxed on that as well. So, you know, the government really taking everything in there. That's here in the UK, that's what I know. You know, and I mean, I can see why the farmers are upset, because they're going to be taxed now when they pass down their, you know, farms that have been in generations for many years down to their family members, and they'll have to pay tax on it. But the problem here is, and the argument I think with some farmers is, okay, they might not have the money in their banks already to pay that tax, So they would have to reduce the size of the farm in order to pay the tax. But you could see where this would go, 3 or 4 generations down the farm. That family in that farm would have to, each time it was passed to them, pay a tax. So the farms would actually be declining in size and not, maintaining what they've got, as they've been accustomed to enjoy for, probably the last 50 or so years. So, it is across every range that you talk about. Salaries aren't meeting the cost of the increase in the wage, increase in the living standards.
But it's not just them that are suffering, it's also the people who have these disabilities. They're also suffering because now they say there is no means test to get the money to supply the care that they need. Everything is means tested in this country just to make sure that they are saying what they're saying is true. When it comes to a person needing care throughout the day, throughout the night, they're being tested on it. They're having to have these checks every year just to make sure that nothing's changed. Now you imagine somebody who's got a life-threatening illness that isn't going to change, and they have a means test, or as they call it, a test to see if they're suitable to receive the benefits from the government to keep that care going. Yet their condition will not change. It will not get better. If anything, it will get worse. It will get worse and worse every year. So why are we going out and doing these tests all the time? These means tests to see, oh, you've had a cup of tea today, or oh, you needed someone to come in today to help you with your dinner. Yet yesterday you didn't have anyone come in and you coped fine. So why are we getting that? Why are we getting these people who can one day do everything for themselves, not realising, right, that their ailments are causing their memory to either one day be fine, the next day, everything can go wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that's the work and role of the social services or what part they play in that, because it should be a constant monitoring over time, especially for the people that do have serious illnesses and probably are at some point going to pass away as a result of those illnesses. What I'm saying is they're not getting better and they're not likely to. So why is it a constant means test again and again and again, when it should already be accepted that this person's probably terminally ill? They're going to require that care. They're going to require those benefits because their illness is not going to be improved at any point. So, why has it got to be constantly retested and retested again?
Basically, they look at budgets there. I mean, they're trying to change the budgets over from where the government pay the person who's not well the income to find their own care.
Oh, we've seen this across the range with so many things. This is where the schools changed the systems and became academies. They give the academies, the money. So every school almost became an academy over a period of a couple of years. Now the schools are running out of money before their end. That time where that money was supposed to last them. And we're seeing schools close, but they're doing it exactly the same now with people that claim housing benefits. The people get paid the housing benefits, but if there's a short fall in the monthly outgoings, guess what's the first to be used? It's the housing benefit, and then people fall behind.
And they've only got to fall behind a week or a month, and that's it. The government's on you. you need to go and pay this, or we're repossessing your house.
Or before that, you're put in a court.
Well, they won't put you in court. They'll send out the letters first.
Yeah.
They always send a threatening letter. When I actually confronted someone within the government about these letters that they send out, I asked them, why do they send out these red letters? And they actually said they're automatically generated when a payment is missed from yourself or whoever for not paying the rent or your council tax. How on earth can the government throw people in prison for not paying the council tax?
Well, I think it could be explained even more simpler than that. How can you throw somebody in prison simply because they can't afford to pay?
And then we talk about the prisons, right? The prisons have got more luxuries than probably what some of these homeless people have living on the street.
Well, you hear this, don't you? People saying that it's, become so expensive to live under my own roof that, it's better for me now to commit a small, tedious crime so that I can go to prison. I can have 3 square meals a day. Someone's going to make sure that I've got clean clothing, and more than that, I've got people to talk to. Whereas some of these people that are living on their own don't have that company, and that can then be appealing to them, that life. I mean, it's terrible because we've got people that literally are on the verge of being thrown out of the house because they can't afford to pay the rent. We know that there are tens of thousands of people already on the streets because they couldn't afford to live on their own in the first place. And then it's not just being able to afford to live, it's able to function as a human being. And this is, I think, what where mental illness creeps in on these people, because I don't think there could be anything worse than somebody being told that they're going to be evicted from their house and find themselves, in some circumstances, they've got no family, they've got no friends, they find themselves, on the streets with all of their belongings, which aren't going to last very long because you can't carry a whole house round on your back, so you eventually lose everything you've owned in your life.
But don't you think this is funny? How all of a sudden we have a pandemic, a COVID pandemic, and then straight after it we have all these problems regarding money, people working harder, people doing 2-3 jobs just to bring in a decent wage now. The cost of living has gone up, the prices of energy. Where are the government there? Why aren't they stepping up when it comes to the prices in the cost of energy?
It's like the government don't see obvious things that can lead to runaway problems. And I'll give you a good example of that. It's a bit off the subject, but if you notice now how many self-service tills are in supermarkets and shops, before that used to be a paid job for somebody. Now it's gone. And them jobs are never coming back because it was an incentive by the managers that run these stores to get rid of as many cashiers as they could, bringing in these self-service tills, because it would pay dividend to the shareholders at the end of the year or whatever on the stocks and shares in that company that they purchased. So there's an incentive to take real good jobs away from people. And we've seen this gradually getting more and more common with other things.
There's a lot of broken systems, isn't there? The government and the institutes often fail to meet basic needs. Unfunded school, healthcare, the housing system leave people without support. Corrupt and bureaucratic can make it worse. The bureaucratic, I can't say that word.
Yeah. But it's like we was talking about earlier, when we was talking about the dental NHS system that's in place. They're limited now, I think, dentists to just pulling teeth out of people's, if they've got decay, they won't fill them because the government won't pay. They certainly won't put a cap on for somebody if they need it. So it's what I was saying, you know, not only are you poor, but you actually look poor now, because, you know, it is a noticeable thing if you've got teeth missing, you know, and that's confidence. It can, you know, lead to depression. You know, the government are just not assisting the people anymore. It's quite clear. You know, it's major letdown. And then on top of that, if if you talk about these issues on these social medias, well, you're also what's the word? Censored by them. Yeah, using the algorithms against you. So, you know, not only, you know, you're aware of these problems, but you can't share these problems with other people so that they become aware of them. And in some cases, that information can be critical to some people, and in other cases it may not be. But, you know, if the government's doing this, who are they actually working for? And who are they actually governing these days? More to the point, who are they governing? Where is the regulations on these big energy companies putting the prices up to the point where people can't simply afford to, like we started off this topic, you know, heat their homes or have some food, heat or eat, you know.
And that's what it is about nowadays. It's about either heating your home or putting food on the table for your family. And I feel that food is more important, but then you're going to become ill. So they are both just as important as each other. Hence, everyone making a fuss about the heating allowance for the pensioners.
Yeah, there needs to be more proactive approach to a lot of people that just don't want to shout at the screen on TikTok or cry in front of on the TikTok because they're living in the car and things like that. People need to, as has always been the case, strengthen numbers, work together. If it's protesting, it has to be done in the right way. And, you know, talking about the problems is a good thing, because it clarifies for some people the topic, and it makes them problems more understandable for them. But for other people as well, they get to utilise that information, which will probably help them out.
And can you believe some of the subjects that have been stopped in schools? In the A-level offering, they don't offer any citizenship or communication and culture, you know, apprenticeships or anything. Critical thinking, they don't offer all the languages anymore. Engineering, they've stopped offering engineering.
What, they don't do metalwork anymore?
No.
In the schools. We used to do metalwork, cookery.
They've even stopped the home economics, the human biology, information and communication technology, ITC.
Yeah, we used to do woodwork, textiles, things like that.
But that's just looking at different subjects that have been moved from A-level offerings.
Yeah, but these problems are going to become more and more apparent as we rely more and more now on technology like artificial intelligence and, you know, this Optimus robot that Elon Musk has just built. They can work 23 hours a day. They don't need holiday pay. They don't need sick pay. They will work literally 365 days of the year. Again, they don't have to be paid. So there are all those benefits for shareholders that have got shares in these big companies. And this is another thing, you know, we've lost all the small shops off the high street. They're only chains now, huge chains that are owned by probably 6 companies. All of the companies in the world are owned by just 6, you know, companies like Nestle's and other big names that own a lot of stores. The small high street's been destroyed by this acceptable form of capitalism now, and with that we've lost what was the most important thing about that high street store, was the variety it offered. I'll give you for instance, if you go into any of the branded supermarkets like Morrison's, Tesco's, Co-op, will you ever see an oxtail for sale in them shops?
No.
And certain other cuts of meat. that the butchers in the high street would have provided for you. You certainly won't ever see a rabbit for sale in one of those shops.
You certainly wouldn't see them hanging up, would you?
No,
Not like in your butchers.
But the butchers used to, especially the old school butcher, he would have had them hanging up in there, yeah. And the pheasants and all the other, varieties of animals that you could have got, but you can't get now. So the varieties are what really go and get cut when these big companies come in. But the other thing is that we've got self-loading shelves. So you've got self-loading shelves so that they're actually stocking themselves up.
Or are they just moving out, sliding one out and
sliding
another one in?
In the bigger stores now, they've got conveyor systems that reload the shelves. So there's another job gone.
People's jobs are going.
Oh yeah, but becoming extinct. There is no longer.
I don't like to think of it like that.
Well, extinct in the market, the working marketplace. And I'll give you a good, for instance, 90% of the people pre-1900s in this country all worked in the farming industry. Now that you have tractors that can do the job without even being steered around the field, so they're running on satellite link systems, they don't need the labour intensive. There's 90% of the workforce no longer employed. But
and who is suffering now? Who is suffering because of this? It's the working class people. Hence, there is becoming a division between working class and upper class and lower class. Upper class is always going to be there. Lower class, working class are going to become one, because you're going to either be on benefits and just get as much as a working class person, because you'll have your housing and different things paid for you, whereas if you're working, you'll earn the money to pay the same, and then it works out that you're left with the bare minimum to then pay your bills and get your food. So both classes are becoming as one, in my view.
Yeah, you could also say that it's almost now a luxury to have a job. You're fortunate if you've got a job, because at least you do get access to a little bit more than what you would on benefits. And this is one of my big issues here. There needs to be benefit reform in this country and in other countries as well. Because if you're going to bring out laws that state you will pay an employed person a minimum wage, then why isn't that the same case for all benefits? Why aren't the people at least given minimum wage? Because let's face it, minimum wage is not a luxury. But what the benefits are paying out people now is not money enough to live on, clearly.
It's not, because the people who are on these benefits are actually becoming ill. And as they keep saying, and I do hate to keep bringing up the subject, mental health is affecting them because they can't afford to live. Like that project with the mice that you did, you put the mice.
Read about it, yeah, where they'd done 2 experiments. One was with there were rats actually. They put rats in an environment where there was just cocaine in the water, and the rats, because there was nothing else to do in these environments, they just drank the cocaine water, even though there was an ordinary water container in there for them to drink ordinary water. They specifically went for the cocaine water, and that was because they was bored. There was nothing to do. Their environment was horrible. Now they've done the same experiment, only putting female rats in this enclosure with different toys in there for the rats to play with, and it was a much better environment for them. Guess what? They didn't even touch the cocaine water. They drank the normal water.
Because they were happy and content.
Their environment was better. And that is exactly the same case for most homeless people. You put them in a horrible environment where they're cold, they're damp, they don't know where the next meal's coming from. It's easier for them to have, take their mind off it by, unfortunately, going down the road of drug abuse. And then it becomes an addictive problem. you know, if they're not getting themselves out in that environment quickly, you know, the longer that they're in that environment and not happy, the more likely they are to become alcoholics or drug abusers.
But then I've heard about some that have chosen to live on the street. They've chosen that way of life because they see a path of freedom and not being governed by the government telling them that they have to pay rent, they have to pay council tax, they have to pay, you know, for a car or everything like that. They would rather have the freedom than have to pay all these made up bills that come in from the government that you actually don't see where you put your money to.
I mean, it's what the government consider also a necessity or means tested. Now, for some people, cars are a necessity. If they're disabled, they need a car. You know, they might be living in areas where there's no public transport.
There is a lot of rural areas where disabled people do live, and that is where a car is most important, because they haven't got buses to get on. And also taxi companies do not have the facility in some areas to accept people who have wheelchairs, so that then becomes a big issue. So they do need the vehicles to go to hospital appointments, to go to the doctors, just in general.
Yeah, but you know, some government politicians would consider cars not necessities. They would be considered luxuries. And
I can't see a car for a disabled person being a luxury. It is there to help them live a normal life as possible.
It's to improve their mobility, isn't it?
Well, it's to help them get around, yes, but they do need that facility, especially if they can't get up and walk. So even if they can't walk so many yards, you know, from their house to a bus stop, you know, without having to stop 20 times before getting to that bus stop, it is a thing that they need.
Another thing just to touch on very quickly is the amount of pharmaceuticals that are wasted in this country, and I'm pretty sure that it's the same in other countries around the world. But you know, I know the chemists now don't accept you bringing back these pharmaceuticals to them because they have to pay to get rid of it. But in some cases, I knew someone that worked in a popular pharmacy, and the people were bringing back carrier bags, literally, of these medications that wasn't being used. And it seems to me like the government just give these out like willy-nilly to anyone and at any quantity.
This is a big thing with me. I don't understand why they do that.
Some of these medications are costing a fortune.
Well,
and
they
they're
do.
giving them out in carrier bags.
Yeah.
You know, they end up having to throw away, you know, carrier bags literally full of pharmaceuticals.
I understand that some medications are needed when it requires, you know, when required.
Yeah.
But to give a person 20 different medications, because what they're actually doing is giving one medication to solve the issue that's wrong with them, and then they're giving another medication to fight the side effects of the first medication that they've given.
Yeah.
So what is the point in that?
It's absolutely incredible.
It's like, let's give you this, and we'll have to give you this because you'll have this effect from this.
Yeah, but I just have these visions of these carrier bags full of pharmaceuticals that...
Can you imagine them going into a landfill?
Oh, yeah.
What sort of rats are we going to get from there?
Yeah.
All hypo rats.
Yeah, I know, but you know, in a lot of these places, they play it safe with the best before dates on them. And you know, those medicines, I'm sure, could be sorted and sent to third world countries.
But it's not just the medication, it's also down to like your bandages and everything. They've all got dates on to say when they can be used by.
Yeah.
Surely, after that date, they can be used still.
Of course, yeah. I think the play's safe.
But
with the,
I feel that with the government, it's, well, we've got to put an end date on these because we need to sell more.
Yeah, but if you're a government that are complaining about, we need to cut costs, then there's a good place to start. Because the pharmaceutical industry, as we all know, are one of the biggest businesses in the world. They literally make billions. And we've got some of the biggest in this country, which I won't mention the name of, but we've got some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies. Then here's another thing, most of the pharmaceuticals are manufactured out in China. By British companies and American companies. And then
so why are our companies going to China?
Well, I know that this is something that's slowly changing. In Ireland, for instance, they've got quite a up and coming pharmaceutical industry.
Didn't BT go to another country as well?
I think it ended up being owned by French Telecom at some point.
Oh, I'm not sure on that, but I know there's a lot of companies that have left this island because of the price of how much it's going to keep them in business to run their business from here within all the taxes and everything that they have to pay. I mean, you're paying tax on your land, tax on the things you sell, tax on the people you're employing, tax on everything. Never mind tariffs by Donald Trump.
We're going to have to get onto that subject at some point. But, just what you've just mentioned there about us outsteading the work and the manufacturing to other countries. Now look what's happened with China. China themselves, because the cost of living has gone up for them, or the quality of living has gone up, and so has the salaries. Now they are exporting their work out to countries like India, Vietnam. So there's a pecking order of people that work around the world for different levels of money per hour. And, your businesses in the UK exploit these other countries until it's, there's no...
Why can't we just train the people from going from school to into the working life to understand and to realise that this is the wage you're going to get. When you've improved yourself, your wage will go up, and then it'll go up and up depending on the level you are at that job and everything else.
Apprenticeships, didn't they?
Well, with the apprenticeships, it's pretty straightforward, the apprenticeships is. I mean, a lot of the children nowadays, when they get to the age where they've done their exams, they then can either go on to doing an apprenticeship or going out into work. I mean, personally, I think if we sort of like even offered them a place in the army or the cadets or the Marines or somewhere, some of them would like to do it. I mean, a lot of the kids now are saying, you can't talk to a child without them saying, oh, you can't say that to me, and you get it chucked back in your face.
Yeah, and some would say that that's conscription as well. You're trying to bring back conscription, but
it's down. Come on, you can see what's right and what's wrong. Everyone knows that if you go into a shop, you take something off the shelf and walk out with it, that is stealing, right? What can the shopkeeper do? Absolutely nothing apart from report it to the police. The police come, have you got video footage? You show them and they say, oh, we can't do nothing.
Yeah.
So therefore, everyone might as well just go and help themselves and walk out.
Well, it's on the high-valued items. You see now a lot of alarms, don't you? I mean, I've even seen alarm tags on blocks of cheese.
But this is what gets me. Some people are really genuine when they go into a shop and they take that little piece of food because they haven't got nothing at home, right? It breaks your heart to think they get done for it.
I follow someone on YouTube called Survival Lily, and she was showing today in one of her videos back garden, because she's turned it into like a small growing area. And last year, I think she mentioned in this video that she saved herself €2,000 by growing her own food. She got a salad packs, potatoes, you know, the general stuff you buy every week.
And that food isn't processed, which is really good.
Yeah, you've
because a lot of the food you buy nowadays is all processed.
Yeah,
I mean, they say chicken's chicken, 100% chicken, yeah, with the bones crushed.
Oh no, yeah, that's quite a common thing.
That is your 100% chicken.
Yeah, but you can, by growing your own, you can control the amount you spend, but more so you can control the quality. Like you say, you control the pesticides, the herbicides or whatever else you spraying on them.
I mean, I'm probably talking a load of rubbish, but you know, the way I see it in life is you were put here for a reason. The reason is for you to experience life to the full. You know, that's from the time you're born to growing up to adventuring out in the world and living your life, and either making something of yourself or just following other people with what they do.
Yeah, I've invested a lot of time into that very thought of what you've just talked about. The only thing we can do in life is experience, and that can come in two ways. It can be a good experience or it can be a bad, but nevertheless it will be an experience. And it starts with, you know, when we're first born, taking that first breath of oxygen. And, you know, why do the babies cry? Because it can't be a very pleasant experience. But you know what? It's the same when we die. You know, we take that last gulp of breath. So from start to finish, and every part in between is an experience of either good or bad.
Well, with these experiences, you actually feel all the emotions going: physical, mental, spiritual, social, and like once you start getting all them feelings, and you start to begin, you know what's right and what's wrong, and it's up to you to choose which direction you're gonna go.
Yeah. So we was going to talk about tariffs just briefly. We won't go on.
Oh no, we can't talk about tariffs.
No, I've got to talk about them.
No.
Because he's just done a complete U-turn, and I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised really that mainstream media have picked up on what he's done, because it's been to no prevail to any good cause or reason. The tariffs haven't achieved anything because he's taken them all back off now. So all he's done is put tens of thousands of people out of a job.
But I do feel we've got bigger problems in this country at the moment.
You know what? I have a lot of American viewers.
I mean, your American viewers...
I've got American problems.
Have their problems with the way their city is being governed, but we've got problems with the way our country is being governed as well.
But they're very similar.
They are very similar, but
I mean, they've got cost of living crisis, the homeless crisis.
I do feel that we seem to sit there and shout it out all the time and nothing gets done. But no one's actually standing together to actually get these things across to the right people.
Yeah, I do like it when I see occasionally, you know, like these volunteers go out helping people that are homeless. They take out food for them, blankets. Thank God we've still got people in our world that are like that, but they're very few and far between.
Definitely are, yeah. And people like that are one of the few saints that we have got left, aren't they? Well, they are who they are because of what they believe, what they see is wrong, especially when it comes to homeless people. Homeless people do have a choice of where they want to be, and like I said to you earlier on, some of them just choose not to be in a house because of all the rules and regulations that are around it.
Yeah, you hear some stories, don't you?
You certainly do.
So I think we'll wrap it up here. I think we've got some good points out for people to be encouraged to comment if they want to down there in the comments section. It's
Please,
great to have you
please feel free.
joining in the conversation. I'm sure that what we've talked about is definitely things that are going on in people's lives every day. And if not all of the things we've talked about, I know that at least a couple of those things that we've mentioned will be, something that they give a lot of time and thought to.
And on that note, I will say God bless to everybody who's listening, and I hope we've not upset you too much with a few of the things we have discussed, and please don't quote me on anything I've said.
Okay. Well, that's a wrap, I think. And maybe if people have enjoyed it and they want to have our conversation at another point in time, let us know in the comment section. If you've got any questions, we would love to hear what you've got to say on the subject. And the only other thing to say is, as always, bye for now.
Bye bye.